names in this video have been changed to protect the guilty. Many picture the devil as a grinning clown with horns and a goatee beard, or as a beer-guzzling king on a fiery throne ordering lost souls to shovel coal to stoke the blast furnaces. They suppose Satan is confined in hell with lost sinners during this present age, and his government and military complex are located in hell. Is the devil just a harmless Halloween monster? Nothing could be further from the truth. Satan's headquarters is here on this earth. Job 1, verse 7, 1 Peter 5, 8. But Scripture promises that Satan will be confined to the bottomless pit during the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. Revelations 20, verses 1 through 3. What glorious, glorious rest that shall be for a world tempted and tormented by his activities for 6,000 long years. At the end of Christ's reign, Satan will finally be cast forever into the lake of fire, never to perpetrate evil in God's universe again. Revelations 20, verse 7 through 10. But at the present time, Satan operates as the prince of the power of the air. Ephesians 2:2. His evil power saturates the very atmosphere of this present-day world. Who sets the trends in today's society? It certainly isn't the godly. All around you, you see and hear holy things mocked, corruption in government, pedophiles on the prowl, recreational sex with all comers, perversion, pornography, warfare, and cutthroat competition in the workplace and in school. Whoever ends up on the bottom of the pile gets thrown to the lions to be eaten up. Kids have to kiss other kids' backsides and conform to the ways of evil to avoid being bullied. One anti-bullying activist author said he was ashamed of having been a bully in school, but he had been afraid he'd be bullied himself if he didn't join the crowd and pick on weaker students, just like when soldiers get shipped overseas to do their job and it's kill or be killed. At Hellhole High, it's bully or be bullied. Only when schools are electronically monitored and patrolled by big security guards authorized to arrest troublemakers, and only when bullying is prosecuted as the hate crime it really is, will students begin to feel safe in school. Bullies should not only be kicked out, they should lose their right to free public education. If the crime is scary, the punishment should be just as scary. I wouldn't send a dog to the kind of trashy schools I remember in my youth. Anyone who dares to be decent is thought to be a relic of a bygone era, or a narrow-minded bigot with a few screws loose. Why is it the loud-mouthed lout, the sexually immoral, vain sinner who sets the trends in society? Because Satan is the god of this present-day world. 2 Corinthians 4:4. He blinds people to the truth of the gospel. He blinds them to the awful fate awaiting those who reject Christ as Savior. As Creator, God actually owns this planet, but Satan is Lord of today's evil world system, which opposes all that is holy and good. Satan even hates those who aren't necessarily Christians, but are gentle, honest, and well-mannered in their outward conduct. Satan runs the biggest mob in the universe. He sends demons to go tempt some teenager to film a vicious attack on his cell phone and transmit the flick all over the internet. It's the devil who rules that high school where the Word of God has been banned. He laughs whenever a bully gets off with a gentle warning after nicking a fellow student with a knife. In November 2018, the British Parliament held protracted, in-depth discussions on the problem of bullying amongst its members. Issues such as harassment, disrespect, and hurt feelings were brought up. Yes, it is a crime for adults to bully one another. But why isn't school bullying being given equal attention by lawmakers worldwide? Why isn't school bullying considered just as horrific a crime as workplace bullying? If such sympathy is shown toward adult victims of bullying in the professional workplace, why are more vulnerable people, children and teenagers, scorned and accused of being crybabies? If work is hell, and adults feel like they are in danger, and the rainbow of their inner peace has been broken, they can just walk out. Heartless truant officers won't force them back into the same old torture chamber or haul them into juvenile court for non-attendance. Adults can leave an unsafe working environment and go look for somewhere else to go make a living. So why do children, the most defenseless members of our society, have to be at the mercy of those who hate them and are hell-bent on their destruction? Bullying is a profoundly destructive, damnable crime against humanity, calculated to physically or emotionally cripple some other human being. The same spirit of Satan which incites murders and torture is also behind bullying. To add insult to injury, I was often blamed for bringing bullying on myself when I was in school. On several occasions, some skinny scumbag darted across the school courtyard and verbally assaulted me while I was peacefully and quietly making my way to the next class. Mike Krapp was a gangly coat-hanger, about 6'6", and couldn't have weighed much more than 100 pounds. Mike Krapp, name altered, was a garden hose that sprayed verbal sewage. Like every other creepy crawly on campus, Mike knew my name, but I'd never even had the honor of being properly introduced to him. I talked to some girl in the bathroom who helped Mike's math teacher grade papers. She told me his name. She complained to Mike's teacher about his abuse. The teacher warned Mike to lay off, but his warning had no teeth in it, so mean Mike had nothing to lose by hurting me again. He only threw the teacher's warning back in my face. Bullies aren't satisfied with hurting you once. They've got to come back to rip your wounds back open time and time and time again. Like ugly vultures, bullies return to scavenge off the dead souls they've killed. No wonder they deserve eternal hell. They show no mercy, so they deserve none. Mike Krapp was a hateful horse's ass that probably couldn't even count both of his two warped brain cells. Mike was a total waste of space, a monster who has reserved the penthouse suite in hell for himself. I didn't know that sack of sin from Adam, but he called me foul names, making fun of my full figure and naturally curly hair. I stood there scratching my anti-establishment wig, trying to figure out an appropriate insult to come back at Mike Krapp with. Spidery Mike ran off before I could adequately express my appreciation for his verbal gas attack. The Viet Cong couldn't have been meaner, but that's the kind of foul human vermin that garbagey school churned out. Mike must have thought he was as cute as a movie star, but his Coke bottle granny glasses must have been way out of focus. I think the real Tom Cruise could afford contact lenses, Mr. Krapp. Any girl would have died to get Mike Krapp's tapeworm figure and shoebrush hairdo, but Spider Mike's face would have cracked a mirror. I hope that snotty snake lost his good looks as he grew older. That would serve him right. Pity any woman who married that creepy crawly and had to take his abuse. Thanks to this lovely gentleman, I developed a mild eating disorder and got to where I was terrified of food, though today I'm a decent cook. But who gives a flying fig what low-life worms think of you or your looks? Mike was nothing but hot air and bones, but those bones will burn in hell like matchsticks if he isn't there already. Since that's Mike's destiny if he dies without Christ, his opinion doesn't carry much weight with me. Long ago I told a Christian counselor about my awful teen years. Well, I wished I'd kept my mouth shut and kept it to myself for all the good it did. He wondered why I hadn't starved on a diet, straightened my hair, or dolled myself up to fend off bullying. What he was really saying is, any problem faced by a female can be solved with dieting and makeup. Only glamorous women are entitled to human respect. So it's perfectly okay for creeps to pick on any girl who doesn't look like Toothpick Barbie. Sexist attitudes are deeply ingrained even in the church. Even God has a hard time rooting these bad ideas out of Christians who realize they can't change the world, so they conform to the way it operates and thinks. Believe me, once you're selected as a target, changing your looks does not protect you. When I was 14, I put on some lovely coral lipstick, and you guessed it, Bully Bastard, who looked like a beady-eyed light bulb, kept on verbally abusing me when the teacher stepped out of the room. He said, "You think you're something with that lipstick on. Your hair looks like sagebrush. But at least I still have my hair at age 70. It's still brown and manageable most of the time. I bet old Billy is as bold as an onion by now. That is, if he hasn't kicked the bucket yet." Ridiculing a bullied child for complaining about being trapped in a torture chamber is the most despicable double standard I ever heard of. Adults suffering on-the-job abuse sure wouldn't blame themselves for the problem or make excuses for their tormentors. They would fight like tooth and nails for their human rights. Blaming the victim? Talk about kicking somebody when they're down. And as for stand up for yourself, even a big kid with a black belt in karate would have a hard time fighting off a whole busload of attackers. Jesus' suffering on the cross was terrible, beyond comprehension. Jesus suffered for the sins of the world, but even his sufferings on the cross eventually came to an end. But bullied children are expected to patiently endure endless harassment and torture, not just for 6 hours, but for 6 months, 6 years, perhaps longer. Prolonged bullying makes you wish you would just hurry up and finish the process of dying, just like a rape victim suffering through the aftermath. Is your child stronger than Jesus Christ himself, that his or her sufferings should never end? Now, I sound like an old reprobate for even mentioning this, but while bullied kids don't suffer more than Jesus, most of them suffer much, much longer. One of the least helpful things said to a bullied child is this: "There must be something wrong with you. Why else would so many people want to bully you?" Right and wrong isn't decided by majority opinion, though. God's kingdom of righteousness is not a democracy. 10,000 satisfied rapists who attack one woman aren't necessarily in the right. You might just as well ask Jesus why everybody takes his holy name in vain. Is there something wrong with Jesus that makes all those nasty sinners treat him with such contempt and snicker about him? Just because somebody zeroes in on you doesn't transfer the guilt onto you for being the target. That's re-victimizing the victim. Unlike people, God doesn't whitewash evil just because it's the popular thing to do. God didn't side with the vicious crowd who demanded that Pilate crucify Jesus. God didn't say something must be wrong with Jesus just because his enemies outnumbered him 1,000,000 to 1. God didn't tell old Noah to join the crowd at the local whorehouse just because he was the only guy who had any moral standards left. Stand on your own 2 feet and defend yourself, even a small child is told when facing a crowd of schoolyard attackers. But it's grossly unfair to put such a heavy burden upon a lone child outnumbered by foes, expecting that one to fight single-handedly the war being waged against him or her without any intervention from parents and school staff who take on the job of substitute parents during school hours, which is called loco parentis in legal terms. God holds parents or guardians responsible not only for providing for that child, but for doing everything they can to raise him or her in a secure environment. Any decent shepherd will fend off the wolves attacking his flock. The gentle sheep are not responsible for protecting themselves from the sharp teeth of wolves and mountain lions. The shepherd is. To shame the victim for being unable to fight off a crowd of attackers is grossly unfair. What if it were you under attack? A lot of people take better care of their own dogs than their own kids. Even a grown-up soldier in the military who crawls on his belly toward the enemy lines to carry out a special duty will have his back watched by his fellow soldiers who will shoot to covering fire to help the soldier get through without being shot himself. But a small child is expected to do all of his fighting all alone with nobody to watch his back. Is that fair? Here is a verse from the Bible that really tugs at my heartstrings. Reproach, or criticism, has broken my heart, and I am full of heaviness, or depression. And I looked for some to take pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. Psalms 69, verse 20. Parents and teachers, put yourself in the shoes of the frightened child who came into this world a trusting, smiling infant and has already been stripped of his ability to love and trust others. For God's sake, stop blaming the victim. How many trillions of times do I have to hammer this home? Bullying is always the bully's fault, and the fault of whoever or whatever molded his spiritual development. Period. Just like domestic violence is always the fault of the perpetrator, even when some long-suffering wives protest. I must have driven him to it. Never excuse the crimes of a malicious sinner who walks in the ways of his father Satan, instigator of all the world's wickedness. If bullies cannot be rehabilitated, restrained, or expelled, schools aren't much safer than a kiddie pool infested with sharks. Schools are even getting dangerous for teachers nowadays, with so many of them being verbally abused and threatened with violence. Teachers who despair of their right to a safe working environment are either quitting the profession or seeking medical help for ravaged nerves. If school is a dangerous place, it's nothing but a necessary evil. How about this far-fetched, futuristic alternative? School bullying and teacher trauma would become a thing of the past if bully-infested schools could be dispensed with altogether, and a robot programmed with educational software could both supervise and educate kids, especially if at least one parent works from home. Unlike a human tutor, a robot would get no salary except its maintenance costs, and it could be on the job 24/7. Kids rich enough to afford such a blessing could just stay home and learn, free from being bullied at school. and they would be in a position to choose which kids they want to associate with without having to be thrown in a cage full of lions every day. But of course that technology is the stuff of science fiction. At the present time, even if most teaching could be done online, kids without parental supervision would still need to gather in a big study hall to do their own individual lessons under the eye of at least one educated adult who could monitor the room to keep warring factions apart. Even so, the bully could still single out victims and attack them coming and going. Good grades matter today more than ever before, but asking a shell-shocked, depressed teenager to churn out all A's and B's is just like expecting a marathon runner to finish in first place with one ankle bound in an iron shackle. The ability might be there, but bullies have forced the child's brain to focus strictly on survival, to the exclusion of all else. You might as well expect an Air Force pilot to keep on shooting down enemy planes up in the sky for hours and hours on end without any help from his comrades. And all that time, one of his wings has been shot off. Not only that, even the weather goes against him. It starts to hail. Then a tornado rips off his other wing, sending the plane in a tailspin spiral downward as lightning strikes the nose of the plane. Meanwhile, surface-to-air missiles keeps blasting away at him from below. If the pilot ends up a casualty of war instead of a decorated war hero after bravely toughing it out all alone under all those adverse conditions, can he be blamed? Man, it sure does take guts to fight your battles all by yourself in a world like this. I remember these song lyrics. Bless the beasts and the children. They have no voice. They have no choice. No one is there to reassure vulnerable kids that they are valuable and worth defending.